Today's episode with my son, Aaron Johnson, will inspire you as he shares his journey with story. When he was born, I was in such a deep spiritual crisis, and I wanted to give him the opportunity to learn and choose his worldview. But how on earth was I going to facilitate that? Soon, story became our medium for connecting and for engaging some of the most important themes we all have to explore and embody on our individual heroes' journeys. So grab a cup of something delicious and a journal and a pen so you can capture every sip of story and sanity. What if story is the answer to our crises of meaning and belonging, to our impulse to heal our lives and help others, to our desire and drive to leave this world better than we found it? Now, we love good stories. In fact, we're kind of obsessed, not just with the stories themselves, but with the stories behind the stories. Their oddly perfect timing, the healing process they provoke in their authors, and their capacity to catalyze individual and collective change. And we love exploring these with writers, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, healers, parents, and others. Tune in to hear these stories behind the stories and entertain with us the real possibility that whether you are a teller or a consumer, story is always offering or leading us to an answer. All right, welcome to Sips of Story and Sanity. Today, our guest is Aaron Johnson, who I love maybe a little bit more than everyone else that I interview because he's mine. He's my kid. So I'm going to read this bio and it's going to be really funny because I know him so well, but you all don't. So here we go. As a writer and emerging entrepreneur, Aaron is passionate about helping people uncover and unleash their infinite potential into the world by building relationships and communities that facilitate deeper learning, necessary conversations, and transformation personally and collectively. He founded Caterbuilder because of his love of community and experience with technology. At heart, he's a detail-oriented visionary with a knack for messaging, storytelling, and cultivating joy and growth in communities. Welcome, Aaron.
Yay, thank you. It's really weird to hear you read my bio.
I bet it is kind of weird to read it because I look at this and I go, wow, we captured you pretty well with this bio, but there's still so much.
Well, there's some stories behind the stories.
There are some
Some might
serious
say.
stories behind the stories, yes. So you have been a little storyteller since you were very, very little. No, you've been a big storyteller since you were very little. In fact, one of the discipline moments that I had with you was around your incredible ability to tell stories that were not true.
Yes, lies. Yes.
And so I remember your dad and I just like wrestling over how we were going to address this because it was starting to happen a little bit too often. And so your dad had his way that he was going to do it. And I was like, hold up a second though, because like these stories are actually pretty good.
Right. You decided to call me a professional storyteller rather than a liar, right?
I did.
You're very careful. Yes.
And so I just had to tell you like, hey, you're an epic storyteller. And also you can't tell untrue stories to our faces anymore.
Yeah.
How's that first story behind the story? No, your storytelling gift started very, very early. And, you know, it came out in all kinds of really fun ways. But I'm glad that you're here to talk about this because, you know, you have been kind of raised with story. You have loved writing stories and we're working on a book about stories. So I'd love for you to tell your story from your perspective around, you know, your inspiration for writing, because I know that writing is an absolute, like, I think it's one of those gifts on your scale of gifts. It's like up there at the top. So when did you realize that you loved story?
Well, it's hard to say. It definitely wasn't with SpongeBob, I'll tell you that. So, or like Blue's Clues. It probably actually it started with Harry Potter. I think the Harry Potter series was the first real movie series that I really got into. And that's when I remember you really starting to ask those questions that you did, or at least that I have a memory of it around who characters were and why they did certain things, all those story elements to get me thinking about the story. Um, and then I just continued from there with other series, and I remember that's when I wanted to watch Star Wars for like really the first time to understand it, and also Lord of the Rings, even though those have been on at certain points. I was just like, I'm too young to understand this or care about it. Was kind of the impression I get from those memories. But that's what really unlocked my what would you say, my attention for story and my love for it.
Yeah. Harry Potter was a really big deal. I mean,
Yes.
there was that one moment which I write about in our book around, do you remember that day you were just ready to turn 12 and Robson had just turned 12, your friend?
Yes. And he didn't get his letter to Hogwarts.
He didn't get his letter to Hogwarts.
No.
And so I'm
Yeah.
driving along the freeway and Aaron is like really brokenhearted for Robson. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, maybe.
He thinks this shit's real.
I
Oh,
was a little bit
no. Yeah.
worried for a minute. And then, I decided instead of like destroying this fantasy, I would ask him, like, what would you do, Aaron, if you had the opportunity to go to Hogwarts? Like, what if you got your letter? Would you leave Robson behind? And he was like,
Yeah.
Mom.
I'd leave you. Yeah.
Yeah, you're all about the magic.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I know that even long before you and I started working on our collaborative book, you had the spark yourself for working on your own series. Tell us, how did that get started? What was the inspiration?
I honestly can't even remember like a specific moment that made me go, "Oh yes, that like I want to write a series." Um, but I know a lot of the concepts around that series, which who knows when it'll come out? Probably in like 2 years, 3 years, perhaps. We'll see if I get back into it. But a whole conversation about human potential, and I think it was like I took a class called The Human Spark. I joined a community that was all about living the potential. I started having conversations about what it means, what potential means, and what it means to harness it. Lissy, your essay that I gave you a dissertation on, or whatever was, it all kind of converged on that idea, and some other things were orchestrated during that time that I felt were too perfect. It was kind of I guess the series comes out of a series of you can't make this story up moments if you really think about it.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it's just outlined. I haven't actually started writing it, but a lot of those concepts are born from that moment, and that kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say philosophy. It's not really a philosophy quite, but principles and ideas.
Yeah. And so when you got started working on the project, were there any challenges that you came up against right away?
No, it was really easy to write. I was really inspired just to like sit down and like journal everything, like all my thoughts, and actually flowed like kind of crazy, probably more than any other writing project I'd ever started, because I was really passionate about it for like a 3 month stretch there. I found an online, sort of like a not a wiki creator, but like a world building service that you do online. You make you start with the actual world and the map of the world, and you sort out the countries and continents and all the relations between them and the people and the races and all that sort of stuff. And I really got into that. And then after doing that, everything became really easy to outline. Again, it just like it flowed, all the concepts fell into place. And it was kind of magical doing all that.
So, so you said that it's not quite done. You're not working on it right now. So what was it that
No,
interrupted your, because
it
I
was
mean,
you, Mom. It was you.
what I
Yeah.
do.
So about that time, so I actually I finished the outline around the same time that you presented me with the pitch for the book that we're writing right now, the religion of story. And I couldn't do both. I tried doing both, but all my creative energy was soaked up by the other part of it. I just couldn't do both at the same time. So I put the other project on the back burner for a little while, which totally fine with. I was really sad about it at first. But like I was so into it that everything's like super well documented. I think I can jump back into it, pretty easily. And it'll be done at the time that it's supposed to be done. But yeah, I'm glad that we're working on our book first, though. Overall,
Yeah.
I did hate your guts there for a sec, but um, tried to make it work, but it was fine.
Yeah, I remember you expressing that you're really frustrated that all your creative energy was having to go to this. But, in the grand scheme of things, one of the things that I was looking at, not just as your mom, but as someone who helps people with books and lots of books over time, was doing a collaborative book. It's kind of a way to go through the process um, without it being just all on you, right? It's in a more supported way. So you'd be able to see what it looks like to go through the entire process of creating a book, not just the manuscript, but what happens after. And then, of course, I know that our community loves you and will help us to make this a bestseller. And so, being able to put bestseller on your CV and in your list of in your bio for when you pitch your actual book series to a publisher maybe someday. I mean,
Oh God.
in the big scheme of things,
I see Lissy's face over there, like, oh Lord, her books and everything.
Yeah, please get there before me so you can just pave the way.
That's funny. Well, part of my challenge with folks working on books is trying to figure out what motivates them, how to like really, like what's really gonna pull them toward their goal in a healthy way. Because, we have really crappy ways of doing that to ourselves, right? So I'm always looking for that healthier way of doing it. And for you, when you were like, I don't know about this, I'm not sure about this book and if I can do it, like you're really struggling with the book that we're working on now. And I remember that I was like, yeah, but what if you could get bestseller before your aunt?
I remember that walk. She hasn't heard that one yet. That's hilarious.
You know how fast you
We were walking, and I was like, "Oh, we gotta run home." Okay, you got
It
me.
clicked for you. That was the motivation you
the
needed.
competition.
It's all there now. All of a sudden, it all makes sense.
If he can be a bestseller by the time
Well,
he's
hey,
18.
she just gave us her blessing for me to go ahead and do that first, so sounds like a win-win to me.
Yeah, I softened that blow for myself, didn't I?
You did.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay, so I distracted you a little bit with a religion of stories. So what has that project been like? The process of working on it.
Oh,
You tell your story
mhm.
in our upcoming collaborative book. You can't make this story up. So what has that process been
Right.
like for you?
Well, it was really easy at first. I remember we sat down at the dinner table and we started outlining it, and we did that in like, how long was that? Like less than a week. We met like 2 or 3 times in a week and got the entire book outlined. We figured out how we wanted to do it, sort of. we're gonna play around with like how are we both gonna use our voices in it and show, make sure readers know that it's me and then you, or you and then me and then you, and like all those sorts of things. But we got sort of the all of the chapters that we're gonna do, figured out who's gonna write the introduction, how the conclusion might go, everything like that, all the topics. And then I wrote it, and we went out of order because of course, why not? I did number 4 and then
Well,
number
I did that on
5.
purpose. I did that on purpose.
Yeah,
I asked you to do number 4 because
it's true.
we used Harry Potter.
Yeah, because this could be the easiest to get the concept for the rest of the book, right?
Yeah.
All the other ones. And it was like one of the fresher things in mind compared to some of the other stories, like Nemo, which I hadn't watched in a long time at that point and would need, assistance or a longer time to think and rewatch and then, connect stories to that. But the way that I went about writing those first two chapters was completely impersonal. I took it from an analytical perspective completely. Like, we're trying to show parents how, they can take certain lessons from movies and TV shows and have their kids reflect on them with them, right? Like watch it together like we did, ask questions, and have takeaways from that. And so I was like, yeah, you write down everything you learned from a TV show, give them an example, how this relates to the greater world and everything, and you're done, and that worked for about 2 chapters, until it didn't, and I hated everything, and I didn't want to write it anymore. And I think I wrote that in the you can't make this story up chapter, like, I brushed the keys with boredom and listened to music to forget the fact that I couldn't, write anymore. And so I remember from the beginning, you pushed me to include my personal stories and relate them with some of the movies and TV shows that are related to each topic, the chapters, right? And I told you absolutely not, pretty strongly, I'm pretty sure, like, shut up, that's stupid. And then I, on the couch, I was like, Mom, I can't write it anymore. And then you brought it up again. What if you use your stories? And I hated your guts for a second, and then I tried it out. I don't remember if I told you that I was going to try it out or not. I might have just done it like, I don't want to let her know that I'm taking her advice, trying it, and started writing it. It might have been like that, because remember, I wrote it in my room, and it made everything like super easy. The connections were there for most of it, and I don't know, it was just a breeze. But it's not fun dealing with your stories, right? When you use your personal stories. That was probably the real reason I didn't want to write them. I think I knew, obviously, from watching you and your clients for 17 years deal with, their personal stories and having to rewrite them and, revisit them, that writing's therapy, and you got to deal with the shadow, throughout the process. And I didn't actually have to deal with that for the first few chapters that I started writing my story. It was all like happy-go-lucky, but right now I'm in the middle of the, what do I want to, like some of the darker stuff, especially around the villain chapter, which I wrote about in the You Can't Make This Story Up book.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you getting really stuck, and as a collaborator and a mom and a coach, me feeling like,
yeah, I don't know how did you like make all those calculations?
I
like,
don't, not very well. I mean, there were times where, like, you usually, when you say you're going to show up, you show up, and there were like weeks where you didn't show up, and I was like, maybe he's not ready. And then when you finally got the story piece, and it moved so quickly and easily, and then you got stuck on the redemption chapter. I remember that interaction where you were just like, I don't know who to, like, what villain. And, part of what we're trying to communicate in the redemption chapter is like, what do we call it? The villain continuum. right?
The
And so
villain
there's
spectrum.
the spectrum, right? And so there's this idea that like that most of us grew up with, if you think about it, it's like very black and white, right? There was Maleficent, and then there was the good king and his innocent daughter. It was like very black and white. And lately, in the last decade or so, we've started to engage with a lot of the new media and news stories that are coming out that are telling the backstories, like what makes a villain. And so I felt like I knew for a while who he was going to be talking about in this chapter.
Your response was so fast. I remember. It's like, who am I gonna write about from my personal life? Because I didn't, I had bullies in second grade, but like kind of wasn't like the same thing. It didn't feel the same. The gravity of it didn't seem to relate to a villain. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were in a situation where we were taking care of your great grandma, and as she was slowly debilitated, being debilitated in her mind and body, she was kind of turning into a beast sometimes. And the love that you had for her was super challenged. And I remember watching that and grieving with you at the loss of that, and wondering how you would someday work through that, because you were so young when it was happening. And then, I thought, wow, we could really look at what made her her, and all of her, not just, the hard parts that you would think around a villain, but what were all the, because you had this beautiful balance of the good stuff and the hard stuff with her. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, there was that one moment where you finally unlocked it, and I got the text that said the title of Aaron's chapter is F you and all of your writing through healing bullshit. Healing through writing bullshit.
Healing through
Oh my
writing.
God. I laughed and cried and laughed and cried and laughed and cried, because it was so powerful what had happened for him. And also it was like that balance of like, wow, this is exactly what I needed. And also, yuck.
Hate your guts right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Everyone.
one of the titles of one of your workshops.
Right? F you to breakthrough.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think that's funny because everyone here in attendance has had a
They
few of those
understand that
moments in
very
the
well.
past.
Yes. Yes.
Definitely. So what are you most looking forward to as you look ahead at your writing career?
Oh. Well,
It's my last
get
question, and then I'll open it up for everyone else.
getting the damn book finished and having it published, which everyone also relates to here, right? Everyone in this community ever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I think I'm probably going to be on the path that Liz was just on with her novel. Well, and still kind of is, but entering more of a fictional atmosphere with my writing, because most of my writing skill has come from. That's why I jumped to the analytical part for the book when we first started, because it's what I was most comfortable with. My schooling required me to kind of write an essay every time I completed a class every quarter, and it was analytical and reflective in that way, and less creative and what would you call that? Maybe not abstract, but like feelings and colors and emotions, and how do you communicate what can't what you don't normally communicate, and give people that picture that you want them to see, that's unique and magical, but also makes sense, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
the big thing with fiction. And so I think that's where I'm going to go. I want to get back to the book that I was writing, and finally like actually start on writing the thing too. And well, I think what's most exciting about it is that it's been about a year, and we've been through a lot, and there's a lot a lot more to incorporate psychologically and I guess archetypally, which is kind of the perspective or the approach that I'm taking with it, to make it very symbolic in a lot of ways to my life and what I see reflected in what I've learned from story.
Awesome. I can't wait to read it. You know, I love reading your writing.
Can't
I'm
wait
just
to
like,
write it.
is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? Can I
I
read
know.
it
I
now?
remember you would not. As soon as I told, see, I didn't tell you about the book for like 3 months, like after I'd outlined most of it, because I knew you would start telling people. I remember I was like, okay, but mom, you can't tell anyone, okay? Okay, but you can't, like, it's not, I'm not even sure I'm gonna go through with it. It's just fun right now, okay? And then you told everyone, and but it's like what we were talking about with Janae is the accountability factor, which I think will carry through. I think that's kind of what you were doing, whether you do it or not. Was yeah, you knew what you were doing.
No, I
Okay.
was just gushing. I was just
Oh,
a
you were just
proud
guessing.
mom who's like, oh my gosh, my kid is a writer. And he's like not just a writer, he's like a writer. Like he's supposed to be doing this and he's doing this. And you know me, when I do that, like I'm very careful about who I tell because I want people who will just hold the beautiful intention with me, right? They're just like, yeah, he is. And I know that they hold that for you while you're in the process of working on it. So
Yeah.
and you know, I think they've all been pretty good about not bothering you too
Oh,
much.
yeah. No, it's totally fine. Yeah, they've been awesome.
So
But
what
just setting that expectations can be a little bit before, you know.
I use that as a motivator. 3 years
What?
in now, three
Telling
years in
people?
now to the process, as I've already told people. So,
Mm,
whether my heart's in this now or not anymore, it's happening. It has to happen because you put it out there.
yeah. Well, that was before I even wanted to. I didn't even know if I wanted to be held accountable because I didn't even know if I was going to go and do it. Like if it was something I actually really wanted to do, but it's been too perfect and magical for me not to, for sure. So I have to come back to it no matter what. Even if you didn't tell everybody,
Do you
well,
find that
it's
when
okay.
you
I think. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think I'm the one who started telling people,
maybe a little.
without you, yeah, getting in there and being like, so,
Yeah.
what are you working on? You hinted, I think, once during a family call about it. I was like, but like, I think that was the only time.
Yeah. And you were whenever I told people about it because of the what you were telling me, because you were just giving me like these little
Hmm.
snippets about,
Yes.
the who the villain is going to be and what the names are. And like I saw you building this magical space. And I was like, oh, this is going to be like a Lord of the Rings thing. This is going to be like Tolkien took years to
Yeah.
develop his worlds and develop the languages and like
Well, I'm not gonna go that far. I'm not that crazy. Okay. I'm not gonna invent whole languages for them.
no, not the whole languages.
No,
No,
I'm
that's
not gonna.
crazy.
No. Yeah. But yeah, I do think it's gonna. You're totally right. It's gonna be like that. It's probably. I think you once said that it sounds like it's gonna be like a lifetime project,
Mm,
perhaps. You know,
yeah.
um, like those authors that just like keep like the series keep going on and on. There's like 30 books in the series now,
You're like,
sort of a
how
thing.
old is this author at this point?
I
Because
know,
he's been there for so
157.
long.
So
Yeah.
yeah. What was your question earlier, Liz?
I was kind of curious because you and I had a really fun schedule of meeting a couple times a
Mm-hmm.
week for a while there and blocking out hours to work on
Mm-hmm.
fiction together. And as someone who always loved academic writing, research writing, and poetry specifically, fiction writing, fiction writing, the visual viewers are going to love that. The fiction writing was always this different capacity I didn't think
Yeah.
I could do. It was like a totally different realm. And so And I don't read any fiction, right? So all the stuff I read is very dry informational stuff. And so that time with diving into that together was really fun. From what I remember, it was mostly you supporting me in those sessions because which was really helpful just because you kind of have a bigger capacity and brain for fiction. But that for me really helped um, create this like magical space. And I feel like every time I get back into my writing now, I tap into that, and it's like I put off, I put it off, and then I get started writing again, and it's almost like I fall into the magic of the story, and it's a different type of magic than when I worked on my poetry compilation or when I, read someone else's memoir, one of the authors that we work with. So I'm kind of curious about what that magical space, writing space is like for you. Do you have any rituals? Do you have any like when you get into it, what is it like for you?
Yeah, well, to get back into like the project, because that's the kind of the only reference point I really have for that kind of space right now, for the fictional magical perspective, is revisiting my first planning pages. Like I read over what the original vision was, even though it's kind of like wrong, like it's evolved, and I actually have a document where the real part of it is, but revisiting and like tracing my steps through the initial planning phases of it really gets me going in that world, and then I work myself into where I left off. And then the really fun part for me is the planning. Like I just like, if I didn't have to write the book, I think I would be okay, like just with planning out the world and how the story would have gone. Like that I could be happy, ending there, and not even sharing it with anyone, just because it was such a fun experience and really magical. Um, and I remember those meetings we had. I was doing the world building at that time, and so I was also in that space of like, how can I add more description and detail to things, and actually give it life by giving it a personifying it in certain ways, or I don't know, finding clever ways to make it more magical and more unique. And I remember you were asking me like, how do I make the sparkles in this forest feel not cheesy or whatever? I don't remember the words you used, but like you wanted to make it feel magical and like things were happening, but not make it feel like really plastic, or you wanted to make it feel real to the reader. And
Yeah, and what I find is that it's very difficult to break out of the boundaries of what we know with fiction or what we've seen. So all these really awesome ideas that
have already been
like
done.
the producers of Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter have come up with, it's like I feel like I'm just pulling from some of those rather than coming up with my own original stuff. And I feel like you're really good at that. And I got a sense of that when we were working. Actually, as you're talking, I'm like, maybe we should work something out where like I'll do the writing for all of your great mapping and ideas. And
Oh, hey.
Ooh, fun
no.
collaboration.
Yeah, for
Yeah, let's
sure.
talk
I
copyright.
I mean, a lot of my ideas for that though, like I think they aren't completely unique, but I think because like you mentioned before, I've been more into fiction more than you have as a watcher and a reader. I have more places to pull from for what would you call that? Oh, the words right here. I need more coffee. Hold on. As an inspiration, there's the word at work. I pull from more places for inspiration and kind of compile things together from a lot of different subconscious pockets in my mind, that were created by various different stories and different video games and different people and all kinds of things, to create animals and kingdoms and all those sorts of things. So I think it does just come from marinating in the magic juice, fiction, the fiction pot.
So how do you get there? Do you have a particular process for getting yourself there to that magic juice?
Well, get yourself a mom that puts you in the magic juice and encourages it, and then asks you questions in the magic juice. And then, how do I? Was your question? How do I get there to the magic juice?
Yeah, like how do
Like,
you
hmm.
yeah, do you have any rituals, or like how do you work your mind to that space? Because I know that you're super busy with work, and at the time you were working on this, you were super busy with school and mock trial too. So I'm curious how you create that sacred writing space for yourself.
Well, I guess the easiest way to explain it is like, you guys ever rewatch something like a movie or TV show that you watched when you were a kid, and you kind of have like, it's like nostalgia in a way, and you have like really warm feelings about it. It made you feel a certain way that nothing else did, like that sort of feeling. And I take that from like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and things that I watched when I was a kid, and I remember the feelings, and I it's really weird, maybe a little woo woo, but I try to translate those feelings into what I'm writing and the ideas that I come up with for that writing. And that's when I do my best fictional like writing ideas and work. Not just from like, not just the material perspective, like what is this person called, what is this place, what does it look like, but like a deeper personalities of the character deep dive, and like when I got
Like,
into really laying out the concepts that I wanted to you know bring out, I remembered what I had watched and read and how they did it and how that made me feel, and that's kind of how I approach them.
yeah, like it's almost like a transfer of energy that
Hmm.
will be relative to your audience, that they'll be able to,
Yeah,
you know,
well, hopefully.
it's very I mean, it makes sense when you're talking about like the different archetypes and
Mhm.
that you're going to be highlighting
Mhm.
in your book.
Yeah. And for those of you who are writers and listening, like that was just this coaching moment that I can't let go. Like so many writers, especially the ones who are gifted and have something extremely important to say. Um, you see the people who are like they do something that's for the craft for themselves, and then the thing doesn't land with the audience, right? Because they're writing
Mhm.
it for themselves, which is a beautiful exercise. But if you're doing it to, inspire other people to get all those yummy feelings that you're talking about that you've
Yes.
gotten, like I've never heard you say that before, but that's really brilliant. It's I actually have an exercise I take people through so that they can try to put themselves back into
Yeah, I don't need that.
the reader's shoes.
Yeah, no, no. Everything I've done with it so far has been extremely intentional in communicating something. Like everything, I like the reason why I was like a big reason why I didn't really want to tell people that it might be happening and have that accountability is like I wasn't sure if I could um, make every part of the story that I've outlined intentional. Like every scene, everything has a super big purpose, more than just, oh, they need to go to this place now and this thing over here. Like there's something to be learned from something that happens, and there's a reason why. Like that's deeper than A to B to C. You know, so.
Yeah.
Which I think is how most stories are written. Like I'm sure lists like you kind of I know you had the same thing with your book. Like you had an intention for what the book would be and do. And then from there, I know you were very I remember you talking about wanting to be very specific with how you communicated things as well.
Yeah, and it's really funny about, that sort of transfer of
Mhm.
energy on particular things. So when I'm working on the romance part in my book,
Mhm.
if I'm stuck, all I know is I gotta go watch A Walk to Remember
Oh
for a
no.
little bit. You know what I mean? And then I get
Yeah.
all those juices flowing. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, I know exactly how I want to,
Yep.
what's coming next. So, but that reminded me of something I've heard Amanda say in her retreats, you know, with when people come to you and they have a story to share or something that they want to write, and they're like, but I don't feel like I'm not going to say anything new that someone else hasn't said before, or my message is the same as everyone else's, and the difference is their story. And so I think it's, you know, what I'm actually finding in experience is that it's not bad to push on all those, you know, like memory points that people have of when they read a certain story or when they heard a certain person speak, or, you know, but raveling it in the new energy of the new catalyst of the story that's being created, while also touching those other points is, you know, that's the magic in it, is that it shows that we're all connected when we relay that information in different ways.
Yeah, there's something like, if you're worried about you talking about the same concepts other people already have, like, you're forgetting the actual, like, that's like a quarter of it until you get to you. Like, you're the other big part of the
Right.
equation.
Or it's part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
That everyone, you know, crosses that point at some point, or they cross that bridge at some point and experience it, you know.
It'd be very interesting. And, you know, I mean, the year that you've had off has been, you know, when I think about your characters and I think about even, you know, your articulation of the villain and the story. And then I think about what's happened in the world over the last 2 years. I'm like, wow,
I have a lot of inspiration.
When you get back into that story, it's just gonna be like
a lot to pull from.
There's so much, because it was almost like you were intuiting what was coming and kind of working through some of it. And now that you've had this experience and been away from it, it'll be really exciting to see you reemerge in it.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the timing. I stopped for a reason, for sure. It'll be better because of it.
Good. Does anyone else have any questions? Any burning questions?
I find it interesting that you can now see that it's going to be better, you know, than that you had that time off to work with your mom and on this other book. That's one of my questions I have, is that one of the things your mom does that just absolutely drove me crazy when I was writing my book was she kept asking me to go back and put more detail in.
Yeah, she's done something like that, but maybe perhaps even worse than what you're talking about. But continue.
I was just going to ask you to share with us how that little portion of her coaching has affected, like, how have you dealt with that?
Well, I actually super appreciate it at that level. But because like no problem with it. And it comes really easy because, like she said before, like we have the same brain. And so when I see her make suggestions, it clicks really quickly. And I can just write it really fast. But the thing that bothers me, like it bothered you, was because I took the analytical approach at first, and I'm now, you know, I wrote a few chapters with that approach. I have to revisit those chapters almost completely because she's moved that analytical part into a like a what would you call that, Mom? Like a reflection for the parent to read, to like
it's
give them
more application based.
Yeah, exactly. And so now I have to rewrite those parts with my story. So it's kind of annoying, but it's not really her fault. It's just the way that the project took, and that's better for it. It's just, you know, I feel like I already finished it and now I kind of have to start over in a way. But you know.
You ever have those moments with her where You're like, I'm gonna send it to her for her to review. I'm gonna give it to her for the review. I know that she would say to do this, this, and this, but I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna see if I can get it by her. And then sure enough.
Actually, no. And I think that's because we outlined everything together from the beginning. And so, and I followed through on what we outlined, I think, from the beginning, just about like all the stories and everything. And if she sees something, it's usually not, huge or breaks, hurts my reality or something like that.
Yeah, you also don't hide quite as much as I do.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's where that is.
Yeah. No, it's true. I don't do a whole lot to his writing. I mean, sometimes we move some things around, but generally speaking, he's especially because like you said, we've organized it, and so we've organized it and talked about it and gone through that process. So it makes it easier. But we did get surprised about a few things. I think we like put some stories in the wrong categories and we're like, oh, we should put that over here. This makes more sense, so.
We wanted to keep like stories, like we didn't want to use it more than once per, in a chapter. Like it's stupid. Like stories apply to all kinds of topics. So
Yeah,
kind of realized
the
like
good stories you could pull through all of the themes, right?
Yeah. Channeled your inner rebel and just said, screw it.
You channeled my inner rebel.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
I heard
you
that
know.
too, and I was like, this. Yeah, same tree.
Mhm.
Don't you love it when she calls you out on those things?
Yeah, well, I do it just as much, if not more. So.
True, I'm sure.
Yeah,
it is reciprocal.
That's what I love about your relationship. Is you both can call a spade, and be real with it and be good with it.
Well, I think in fact we welcome it.
Yeah.
Like that's where it started. Is you consciously asking me to call you out on your BS, and I've just expected you to do the same. Well, because you always have, whether I liked it or not. But you gave me that opportunity to see what that did for you, actually, rather than you just being my mom and telling me whatever. It just, it's a different. You put me in your shoes, or my own shoes, or however that works, from a different perspective. You put me in my shoes, looking out from your. Okay.
Something. It's complicated. It's very strange to have people ask me like, oh, you have a teenager? I'm so sorry. I'm like, no. Super fun and easy, right? It's just weird.
Yeah.
We're an anomaly. But hopefully our book will help parents to build some of those bridges, and have some of those pathways built so that when the rebel starts to come out and the individual starts to make themselves known and
the professional storyteller starts to
exactly
start some stuff.
Yeah. How do we use story? What would this mom do? Right? She's like my favorite mom in all of the stories I've ever watched. Yeah.
Empowering your kids to call you on your stuff. It takes guts. And you know what? If you want to transform, if you're committed to transformation, becoming a better, like there's no better way. I remember when I did it, because I discovered I was not, that I had some abusive characteristics. I was raised with it. I didn't know any different. And it's like, how do I stop? Because it comes out of my mouth that, I act that way. And so I empowered the kids. When I do this, when I say something that makes you feel ashamed, when you feel demeaned, when I have a tone, I give you permission to call me on it respectfully. Mom, you've got that tone. Mom, I'm not liking the way that feels. And the older kids were too scared. They had enough experience. They were too scared. But the little ones, I remember my little 3-year-old boy saying one time, "Mommy, I don't think Jesus would say it like that."
Oh my goodness. That was your own ugly and unnecessary moment. Said differently.
So,
my
but you
goodness.
know what? It works. I mean, I was able to do massive turns around and switches by empowering my kids to call it like it was, respectfully call it like it was. And I said, I promise, when you do it, no matter how upset I am, I will retract. If I have to go the other room, whatever, I'll do whatever it takes, and I'll come back and I'll redo it. And I did. I was committed to it.
Yeah.
And it helped transform my life. I'm a very different person, and I salute my kids for seeing it like it was and calling it.
Yeah. Well, and the older kids, maybe it would have been harder, but if you do that from the beginning, then it's
Right.
safe to do that. And there's no, I put myself on notice with him to say, nope, when I step out of, and there are times where it has been very ugly and unnecessary. And the thing is that because I empowered him, I can't get mad. I asked him to do that.
Yep.
And because he's empowered, it doesn't come out twisted and dark. Right? It's not like he's been stewing on something for a long time, because
Oh,
he's
that's good.
always addressing it. And it's like, I said something heinous earlier in the year, and he just looked at me and was like, that was ugly and unnecessary. And I mean, it was really ugly and really unnecessary. And his energy was just like, yep, that's what it was. It was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go take care of
You
myself.
just laughed at that. I thought that was a reaction.
Very different.
I don't know what came over me. I don't even remember that moment, to be honest.
Aaron, so
Hmm.
I know you've been involved in improv and mock trial. Improv scares me. I mean, I like at retreats, I've always managed to be gone when that was going on.
Conveniently. Yeah.
Because I'm not good on my feet. That's what I say. I shouldn't say that. But I haven't felt like I was quick on my feet. How do you think that has do you think that's helped your writing or your creativity or?
Yeah, I think during like brainstorming processes, like whenever I crack a joke, well, not whenever, but when I crack a joke sometimes, my mom's like, how did you even make that connection? Like, I don't even, I had to think about that for a few seconds to understand what the joke was. Like, it was such a weird, pattern. And I just got to say it, I think it was partly my dad, and his humor helps me make certain connections and callbacks to certain things that have happened. And I think I'm just wired to do that now. Like, just to spit out the first thing that comes in my mind. The first thing that comes in my mind is this crazy connection. And that kind of comes out in the brainstorming process. And it kind of helps me have global perspectives on things, not just from writing standpoints, but from other, standpoints like work. Mostly, like my mom and I talk about that all the time. It's like, oh yeah, you see things the way I do. It's like this weird matrix of details and information and all those sorts of things. I hope that answered your question. I kind of took it to the left to bring it back, but I think I went a little too far in the other
It's
direction.
okay.
But
I was just wondering because it's for me, I have this fear of making a mistake or going a wrong direction and putting myself and I would think that practice of just going with it and I would think that would help in creativity, like not questioning what comes in the mind. I start to write something and I think, on my back, but go ahead and just write it. say it and
Yeah.
clean it up later if you need to.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely used to be like that. Definitely with my writing and with everything else in my life. I remember when I was younger, like I started writing things like it was gonna be a book. But I was too young to like understand like the planning out needed for it and like the goal orientation of the writing to make sure that it took the right direction. And so after when I actually felt kind of ashamed by some of the stuff that I had written before because it like wasn't gonna go anywhere because I didn't plan it out properly. So I took a very like um I kind of developed a mindset that I couldn't write. Like I didn't know something that I needed to know in order to write a book or whatever, something long form like that. Because I've never planned anything out like that. I never knew, you know, um, how to do anything like that. And uh, I don't remember exactly how I broke out of that, but it might have been improv. It might have just been that, like that's what broke me out of my personal inflexibility with doing anything that wasn't staying in my room at a certain point in my life after we moved from California to Oregon. Um, I learned to how be comfortable with the uncertainty, and it's basically just what my improv teacher always said: is perfection is the enemy of the good,
Say that
and
again.
perfection is the enemy of the good. And shitty first drafts are the way to life, and so yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what resurrected your creative spark for sure. Was
Agree.
I saw you just like taking chances in all the ways, and I really appreciated that you were in an environment where you had her and many other teachers being like, why not just try it? Why not just do it and fail and do it again better next time? And I mean, that was even her commencement speech about like, to all the 18-year-olds in the room. Like, okay, so you're an adult now, and here's the big secret.
Don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, all the adults in this room, we don't know what we're doing. So it's okay that you don't. It's like, I love that. And I've definitely seen how that perspective has really, really destroyed a lot of the limitations that occurred because of other circumstances. So
yeah, I think you've always told me that, Mom. I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
You've had the behind the scenes look at that one, story behind the story
sure
of how
have.
this lady doesn't know what the heck she's doing half the time.
I remember you were, Amanda, I don't know. I don't think you was 11. How old were you when you left?
12 or 13. 13 probably.
I don't think you were 11. You're probably 10. It could have even been 9. You wrote something, a story. I don't know if it was, and Mama sent it to me and said, look at what my kid just wrote. It was amazing. I'm like, wow. So getting to read your chapters as you're doing them now, it's really, I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. It's great stuff. I love how your mind operates too.
Of course she sent you all that stuff. You lived with us for a while. You had a good look into that brain of mine, just like she did for a while.
I said, I accused her, you got in there and you helped him, right? She said, no, I didn't. That was all him. I'm like, oh my God. Did you coach him? No.
No, the most she's ever done for my writing is make suggestions. I think. I don't think she's ever rewritten anything for me or coached me like from a, I don't know. I don't know how to say that. I don't know. When I was younger, I don't think he really had too much involvement in my writing.
No, I could barely do anything through the tears. You were so good at it. I was just like, no, I mean,
true.
And you had good teachers who were, taking care of grammar and punctuation. So it was really always very minimal cleanup.
they made me read hard things to read at my age. Like I think I read The Hobbit in 4th grade. That's probably a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think she made me read The Hobbit. I was like, "You think I can read this?" She's like, "That's a big book," and I was like, "Okay, I'll try." I probably didn't get all of it, but it taught me a lot.
Yeah. So through the creative process, what have you learned about yourself? Because, that's one of our little beliefs over here, one of our big beliefs, that the creative process helps to reveal more of ourselves to ourselves. So
Well, and like I wrote in my chapter, I now know what it feels like to be a true to intention client, right? To rewrite the stories.
Mhm.
And that, even though I probably don't have as much of a therapy fund as other kids need, you know, there's still always going to be stuff to, stories that need to be rewritten. I've also learned that it's very difficult for me to get into to start writing, to just do it. But then once I start doing it, then it's really easy. So I just need to force myself to start just typing a few words, and then it comes and the flow starts again. For the more creative stuff, for sure. I don't know. I've also learned that I like being snarky in my writing. It's really fun. Yeah, I really relate to Janae and her fun writing style. That's the best way to go about it. Although I try to keep myself maybe a little more tame, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's very, your writing is very self-reflective. So you'll say something and you'll be like, that was funny, right? Like you write it and then you comment on it. It's a very powerful way to bring people in to not just the thing that you're trying to say, but into the creative process with you.
It's the fourth person perspective.
It's the fourth.
I'm labeling that and taking that.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
I like it. So what's next for you?
Shoot.
What are you working on?
I don't think about that all too much. I used to think about that before I started doing improv, and then I stopped caring so much about really thinking it through. And it's a good thing, and maybe it's also a stupid thing. We'll find out. We'll see in a few years probably, but no. I've started a business, and I'm hoping to really launch it coming up soon. I have a few clients, but I haven't really been hey, over here, this is what I'm doing, world. And to really kickstart that journey and figure out what I really want to be doing, and more of what I really don't want to be doing, and refine that niche. I don't know. I'm open to any opportunities. I'm not very like this is what I want. I want something like this. And I know that it'll come to me at the right time, whatever it is, and be the perfect thing for that time, because that's how it's always been for me. I think you've probably seen that, and you probably agree, Mom. I think you have the same perspective on that. Obviously, we're going to launch this damn book, hopefully before my birthday. And I don't know. I'm taking a course on project management. Does that fit into it? Just trying to increase my, just always keep learning. I think a big part of what I like doing is always just staying curious and figuring out stuff that I don't know. That's always it's the most terrifying and repelling thing about what I do, and also the most engaged that I am with what I do. And it's the worst dichotomy and the best dichotomy. There's that fourth person reflection right there on the. Okay, yeah. I don't know, and just that sort of stuff. Do you see anything? that I miss.
Mm.
I feel like there's people that do all the time.
Yeah. Well, you're figuring it out. And what I love is that you don't feel compelled to fit into a vision that was put on you. And you're just in the process of life figuring it out instead of, feeling completely stressed out about it. You kind of have this perspective. And it's one of the reasons why I pitched the book, Religion of Story, to you as a collaboration, because when I heard you, it was the conversation that you were joking about when we were watching God Friended Me, and there was this idea that like all of these little things were being figured out. And of course, and you were like, that person really needs to watch God Friended Me. And I was like, but you've had that experience of watching that happen in my business and having me share those things and seeing it for other people and experiencing that sort of magic in your own life with having gone to Village and all the opportunities that opened up and the work that you're doing now. It just kind of seems like you don't need to worry about it. Your potential is unfolding in the right time, as it should, in the right places, and it's being directed. No doubts about that.
Amen.
Amen.
It's funny you brought up God Friended Me. That show's so cheesy, but then you really think about it from our perspective. It's just like, no, it's not that far-fetched. It's kind of how we feel about things being orchestrated, and you can't make this story up ways. It's kind of the whole point of this whole thing that we're doing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is definitely the whole point. Well, Aaron, do you want to give your information out to our listeners so that they can pay attention to what you're doing and learn more?
Sure. Well, I don't use social media. It's, I'm 18 and I don't post anything, which is really, really weird, odd. But pretty much most of what I'm doing can be found at caterbuilder.net. It's like a caterpillar, but without the pillar, and you put builder in there, .net. It's kind of a funny thing that I got going on there. You're the butterfly, I'm the caterpillar, and then I kind of just figured it out from there. Another you can't make this story up thing going on over there. It's a whole story within itself, isn't it?
It is. We have to make sure that one gets into the Destiny chapter. All right. Well, thanks for being my kid. Thank you for being part of my team. Thank you for being the spark for all of my personal transformation and healing, and also so much of my business growth. I have stories upon stories about what I've learned from you and your entrepreneurial 4-year-old mind. So, I mean, even back then at 4 years old, and now being
at the
part
garage
of
sale.
being part of this this community at the level that you're at just makes me super happy. So thank you all for being here, and I think that's it for this episode. What do you think? Is it a wrap?
Wrap it up. I'm out of coffee, so I don't know what else, I'm not going to be awake for much longer, guys.
All right, it's time to go. That's a wrap. Sips of Story and Sanity has to stop because we got to go get more sips.
We took all our sips. Okay.
All right, see you next time.